How's it going, everybody? If you saw my last video, I did end up selling the scrap build I did, and I took that money and put it into these parts you see here. Obviously, I haven't unboxed them yet, but I'm going to in just a moment. For my scrap build, which had an i5 4460 and an R9 270 in it, I got $350 for it, which was right about what I was hoping to get. For this new system, I only ended up spending about $315 of that. However, I already have some DDR4 memory kits lying around, and so that cost does not include memory. And based off of prices on eBay, used 8 gigabytes of RAM kits go for about 60 to 65 bucks or a little less. And I also kind of want to just clarify what the point of this series is. First, if you're looking to get a new gaming computer and you've got a lower budget, in this series, I want to show what kind of a system you can get by going with used components over a brand new build. Because the parts are used and cost less, obviously you'll be able to build a more powerful system on a dollar for dollar basis. Of course, there are potential pitfalls that can come from buying used parts. You don't really know how they've been used, and there's no guarantee that they'll work long enough to give you the value you paid for them. Also, I want to show the process of flipping computers and talk about the business aspect of it. My goal is to make a profit, but you could use this same process to start with a budget-friendly system and essentially flip yourself up to a high-end system, with the idea being you build a budget system, list it on Craigslist or Facebook, game on it and use it until you sell it, and then when you do, start the process all over again with a higher budget than you had before. Now, from a purely business aspect, I think there's probably two main variables that's going to impact how I'm going to do, and you as well if you're following along. And first, is profit margin, which is just obviously the difference between what you paid to build the system and how much you end up selling it for. And secondly, and what I think is probably even more important, is how fast you can sell the computers. If you live in a small town in the middle of nowhere, this strategy is going to be a whole lot more difficult to pull off. But if you live in a huge metropolis area like Los Angeles, this strategy will be a lot easier to pull off. Now, I live in a decent sized area and I was able to sell the last computer in about a week, but in a bigger area, who knows, maybe you can move these systems in a matter of a couple of days and as a result make a whole lot more, or be able to upgrade your system more quickly. Now, let me just clarify, I'm not an expert on this, so a lot of this series, at least right now, is just going to be me trying to figure out the sweet spots for the types of components to get, what to price the build at, how to make the listing stand out, and everything else that kind of goes into it. In any case though, I just wanted to highlight the point behind this series again, and then spell out some of the variables involved so that when I do explain component choices, you have a better idea of where I'm coming from. But with that being said, I'm gonna open up all these boxes and they'll give you a look at the parts I chose and then kind of go over why I chose each one. First off, I got all of these parts used on eBay except for the case and the power supply, which I actually bought brand new. I got the Corsair CX550 from Newegg for $49.99. It's good enough to handle most single GPU setups, and while I could have saved money by grabbing a power supply on eBay, there weren't any listings that jumped out at me. And I also managed to score a $10 gift card from Newegg because they started offering a $29.99 mail-in rebate on the CX550 just a few days ago. And when I asked if I could return the unit and repurchase it so that I could get that mail-in rebate, they said they'd just give me a $10 gift card rather than deal with me returning it. So ultimately, $39.99 for a brand new Corsair CX550 was a pretty good deal. For the case, I got an AeroCool Aero 300 FAW for 36 bucks on Amazon. It's a mid-tower case that has a fully transparent acrylic side panel as well as a full-length power supply shroud. Now, this is not a high-end case by any means, but this choice kind of goes back to the fact that I'm trying to sell these builds in a timely manner, and I think by making the build look nice, the listing will stand out more, and hopefully I'll be able to sell the system more quickly. So the fully transparent side panel and the full-length shroud should allow me to build a system that does stand out amongst the other used PCs listed on Facebook marketplaces and Craigslist. Again, I could have found something used, but for just 36 bucks to get a brand new case that had some of the aesthetic features I was looking for, I'm pretty happy with this choice. Now for the CPU and the GPU, I got a Ryzen 3 1300X for $80 after shipping and a GTX 950 2GB graphics card for $90 after shipping. Originally, I was targeting a Ryzen 3 1200, but I ended up getting the 1300X at about the same price that most used Ryzen 3 1200s were being sold for on eBay. And for the graphics card, my plan was to get a GTX 960, but after reevaluating my budget, the GTX 950 made more sense, and I was able to get it for a fairly decent price. And I think the combination of the Ryzen 3 1300X and the GTX 950 will be good enough to handle pretty much any game at 1080p at medium or higher settings. For the memory, I had a 4x4 16GB kit of Corsair Vengeance LPX 3200 MHz already lying around. So I just used 8GB of that in this build, and I'll use the other 8GB in the next system I build. Now, I wouldn't use this kit in the normal build because it would be a bit more expensive than I'd like, but a used 8GB of DDR4 memory is going for anywhere from $55 to $75 on eBay. So if you factor that in, the total cost to build this system is about $375 or about $365 after the $10 gift card I got from Newegg. And to round out the part list, I got a used ASRock A320M DGS motherboard for $31 and a 1TB Western Digital black hard drive for $25. I would have preferred to get a B350 chipset motherboard, but for a $31 buy it now price, I couldn't pass up the ASRock A320 board, and a 1TB hard drive should offer the buyer plenty of storage. Overall, I spent about $315 on the parts, and that's technically $305 after the $10 gift card from Newegg, which I will be using on my next system. So that's about $365 total when you account for the cost of a used memory kit for anyone who wants to replicate this build. Or if I were to build this system right now, I could cut that cost down about $19 cheaper because of that $29.99 mail-in rebate that is currently available on the Corsair CX550. Ultimately though, I think this system should be great for 1080p gaming, but let's put it together, we'll benchmark it, and then we'll find out exactly what it can do. Alright, the system is put together, I've run diagnostics on it and stress tested it, and fortunately everything is working fine. I benchmarked the build in GTA 5, Fortnite, PUBG, and Middle-earth Shadow of War on my 1920 by 1200 monitor. It handled PUBG, GTA 5, and Shadow of War nicely on medium settings, and it handled Fortnite easily on higher settings as well. And as I did run these benchmarks on a 1920 by 1200 monitor, on a 1080p monitor, there would probably be a slight increase on those numbers too. So now all I have to do is list the system. My plan is to list the build at $600, and honestly that number is probably a little too high. I think for what I paid for the system, getting even $475 to $500 will be a nice increase. But I'm going to list it at $600 to see if I can get maybe $550 for it. If I don't get any interest on it in the first couple of days at the $600 listing, I'll drop it down. After I sell this build, rather than put that money back into a single system, I think I'm going to split it and build two budget-friendly systems with it instead. My reasoning is that the higher the price on these used systems, I think the fewer people there will be that will have the money to pay for them. Also, splitting the profits into two builds could allow me to have more cash flow coming in, because rather than waiting around for one higher end system to sell, if I sell one of these cheaper builds quickly, I can turn around and put that back into the next build while I wait for the second machine to sell. Ultimately though, I'm happy with how this build turned out for the price, and I think the performance along with the aesthetics of the build are going to help it sell fairly quickly. I've linked to the full part list in the description below if you want to build a similar system, and in any case, hopefully I'll be back with an update in a week or two. Thanks again for watching, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, give us a like if you found this video helpful, and I'll see y'all next time.